Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on updates impacting RESNET standards for 2025. We are so pleased to have with us Charlotte Reed and John Hensley, both Standard Development Committee chairs, to talk about some of the upcoming changes that are happening with the standards. As always, as you've been with us before, you may know what we're going to do is record today's webinar and make that file available after we start, after the webinar is over, and then we're going to hold the questions until the end of the presentations. So please use the questions box available on GoToWebinar to type in your questions, and we'll try to get through as many as possible in the time allotted. With that, I am going to turn it over to Charlotte to get us started.
All right, thank you, Valerie. I'm Charlotte Reed. I am the chair of SDC 200, which is the Education, Training, and Certification Standards Development Committee. You can move it forward, Valerie. Next slide. Uh-oh, okay. Try again. There we go. SDC 200 is the committee that's responsible to oversee the education, training, assessment, and certification standards. We are a MNHERS committee, which means we are part of the Mortgage Industry Network Home Energy Rating System. And we are responsible for basically the training and certification and recertification standards that are in the MNHERS. We have members from the 3 different categories that our standards development committees work in. We have users, producers, and general interest members. Users are people who use HERS ratings, like builders, and use HERS raters, builders, government and private sector programs, which would include things like energy codes and code officials, people like that. Our users for our committee, we have users that we have Mary English from the Metropolitan Energy Center. They have some programs promoting HERS raters and working with code officials to help the codes be implemented, newer codes. We have Jesse Kravolovec from Millennial Impact 6, Doug McCleary from McGrath Associates, and Mark Schroer, Habitat for Humanity. I do see an issue with my slide. I apologize here. I am the chair, and the vice chair is Doug McCleary from McGrath Associates. The wrong name got copied and pasted up there. Apologize for that. The producers are people who are training providers or HERS raters or QADs. Those of us who actually produce HERS ratings work with RESNET. That would be myself, Robert Cantrell, Tay Kacharsky, and Uriah Special from Building Efficiency Resources. We are all in the producers category. And then general interest are people who are advocates for HERS ratings and for RESNET. Educational institutions, government entities, people like that. So we have Rod Buchhalter, Olga Cano from HUD, Robert Lipkins, who's our consulting psychometrician, and Zach Shadid from Energy Star, from EPA. Okay, you can move forward. Please, next slide. We need the next slide, please. Valerie?
Oh, I'm having some technical difficulties. My apologies.
Okay.
No. There we go. Sorry about that.
There we go. Okay, so we worked in 2024, and Addendum 80 is the main thing that we are going to be talking about today, which has to do with training provider responsibilities, rating QA provider responsibilities, graded field evaluations, probationary ratings, probationary models. We'll be getting into those details here. We also handled an interpretation request about whether or not graded field evaluations can be counted as examinations, and it is not an examination, it's an evaluation of skills. And we took care of a bunch of editorial updates. The HERS modeler and the HVAC grading standards are the most, the newest items in chapter 2. And of course, once we put them in, yes, everybody knows as soon as you put something in writing, you find all kinds of things that need to be fixed editorially. So we did some editorial fixing on those items. All right, next slide, please. We're having a few technical difficulties here.
It's just, you know, it's one of those days.
That's okay.
Yeah. Not sure what happened. Hold on. Okay. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so addendum 80 is what we addendum 80 is what we are here to talk about today. And it went into effect, became mandatory on January 1st, 2025. So this is a clarification about the requirements for rating quality assurance providers. They are the responsible party that confirms that all the requirements have been met whenever they're certifying individuals in any of our certifications. So that's HERS raters, HERS modelers, rating field inspectors, and those who are certified to conduct standard 310 inspections. Go ahead and click. We added section 206.1.6 to the standards. It's called certification evaluation, and it makes it clear that it's the rating QA provider that does that review and evaluation and maintains all certification records. Obviously, they need to have the certificates that the individuals went through training, but they also need to maintain, they need to evaluate and maintain, and they're responsible for ensuring or for making these things happen, different items for different ratings, so or different certifications. For the rating field inspector, that includes the RESNET approved graded field evaluation. For the HERS modeler, that includes a minimum of 2 probationary rating models for each RESNET accredited software tool that the modeler is going to be using. Go ahead and click. For the HERS rater, that includes the minimum of 5 probationary ratings, plus the 2 hours of combustion safety field training. And then for standard 310, that includes the RESNET graded field evaluation. The rating QA provider is the one who is responsible to have all of these things performed and maintain the information and evaluate it to determine whether the person can be certified or not. There was some confusion that came up that made this clarification a requirement, where we had some students, some candidates for each of these items that had received some of the, like a graded field evaluation, or they'd done some probationary ratings during training, and those did not count, those do not count for the probationary ratings or the graded field evaluations that are required by the rating QA provider. The rating QA provider is the one who must do those things and evaluate them and maintain the records. Now, they don't have, what they can do if they are working with a training provider, they can delegate that responsibility, or that they can delegate the opportunity to perform those tasks to the training provider, but they are still responsible for them. And so some people might have gotten some training and done a couple probationary ratings, and then they joined a provider who did not have an agreement with the training provider and had to do 5 more. And so we just wanted to make that really clear that this is the responsibility of the rating QA provider, all of these items, to complete and make sure that they have completed them within their providership and they've evaluated them before they confer the certification. Okay, you can click it, please. We also clarified that graded field evaluations and probationary ratings have to be performed in the presence of and under the observation of a QAD or candidate field assessor. They can't be performed remotely. That was the interpretation request, asking if it was an exam, because exams can be proctored remotely. And the clarification was, no, this is an evaluation of field skills, needs to be performed in person under the observation of a QAD or candidate field assessor. All right. I also wanted to share with everyone what our plans are, what we're working on in 2025, and make sure that everyone knows that if you're interested in participating in any of these items that are going to be going into the standards or that we're discussing about for standards, let me know, because we have set up some work groups, and we can certainly, we would certainly love to welcome anyone to work on these work groups who has an interest in these items. The first one is that our RESNET RFIs, we're talking about changing the credentialing requirements for RESNET RFIs, and including the RESNET practical simulation instead of or in addition to the ResCast simulation, because the practical simulation is basically what the RFI does, out doing field data gathering. We also want to consider adding more building science and ResNet knowledge to their training requirements. With HERS modelers, there's been some questions about the professional development requirements for HERS modelers and what is required in that software training. So we're going to clarify that and come up with those answers as well. Training content and delivery standards, we're looking at what the training providers are doing. We've had some concerns voiced about differing levels of training delivery and training content, and so we want to make sure that we are understanding that as well, and that that's very clear in the standards. And then what happens if a HERS rater, HERS modeler, or rating field inspector are certified under multiple providers? What is the what are the requirements for the providers that they are certified under? How does that work, especially with certification and recertification and any training requirements? What are the providers responsible for making sure happens, and how does that all work? And we're going to be working with John's group for that one as well, because that crosses boundaries into Chapter 1 and Chapter 9 as well as Chapter 2. So those are our 2025 items that are on board right now. And if anyone has an interest in working with us on those, we have some working groups, and I would love to pass your names along to the work group leads to see if, and you can help us out, help us figure that out. Okay. And I believe, yep, there's my email address. So if you want to send that to me, please do. And yeah, if there's any questions about any of this now, do we take them now, Valerie, or wait till the very end?
We're going to wait till the end, so please have everyone type your questions in the box.
All right. So that is Addendum 80. That is what SDC 200 had. That is now required to be followed, and we'll turn it over to John.
Okay, thank you, Charla and Valerie, and I appreciate all that you do, and thanks for including me in your conversation with these changes for SDC 200. As you and I have talked about at the conference, I'm happy to participate in that, and of course we'll work with you on changes to Chapter 1. My name is John Hensley. I'm the chair of SDC 900. SDC 900's job is to update the national standards for the MNHERS, and we also work with the ANSI standards with SDC 300 when there's changes that are made that may be impacted in the quality assurance. We're also making sure that we have consistency across. Now, there are differences between the ANSI standards and the MNHERS, and that's always a time that we have to make sure that we have consistency, but at the same time, we don't have anything in conflict. So let's go ahead and move to the next one. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today is multiple addendums. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is everybody always says when they see these webinars or they come to the conference, they say that they've not seen this information, they didn't know it was coming, and that they don't know where to find it. So before I get going, I'm going to just put a little thing in about the fact that the RESNET website has all the addendums on it, and as a change in the standard moves through the process, we're a consensus-based process, and you'll see these go out to public comment multiple times. That's part of the consensus process. It does take time. Just to give you an idea, I filled out the request for these changes 2020, I believe. And so they do take time. Addendum 67 right now is on its second public comment. I talked to the standards manager today, and it's wrapping up. We've only had a couple comments, so if you all see it out there and you want to make some comments, you have about one more day to make comments on Addendum 67. And those providers, as we make changes, this is your chance to get that information in and comment on the addendum before it becomes comes the law, so to speak. All right, so starting in chapter 1, we have updates on when the QA checklist. So basically, the organization's moving from paper to digital. We've been doing that the last couple of years, and we're truly going to be there in 2026. If all goes well with Addendum 67, Addendum 75, and a few other things that we're working on, they're going to be applicable and mandatory 1/1/26. And so updating these QA checklists must be used. The scoring of the QA checklist must be utilized. And next, 102.111.3, I'm not going to do that all the way through. Rating providers must use the QA application to complete all QA. And basically what you'll do is you'll do all your file QA, all your field QA on a quarterly basis, and that'll be submitted as you're doing it through the your registry. And you all are getting ready to see a brand new format in the registry. So the RESNET Board of Directors has been working for the last few years. They've appropriated funding for the RESNET QA team and RESNET staff to spend more money on the registry and on our platforms, and the registry will have the capability to accept these documents, and you'll continue to see upgrades as we're moving into the digital world, and I think it's a great thing. Prior written approval for RESNET must be received before any alternative formats. Now, this is if you're not submitting, you're a large operation, you have your own automated system. All they're asking you to do is to get that approved before you use it. That way, everything flows well. Valerie, can you move the slide, please? All right. 102.1, providers must confirm any of their use credited software. So if there's any software tools, will not alter the uploaded HERT score. So you want to make sure that your software tools meet RESNET standards and that your processes don't affect how those standards are done. Updates to the conflict of interest disclosure. You'll see that we've made it easier to use the conflict of interest disclosure, and I don't think anybody will disagree on that. When it's needed, you'll use it. When it isn't needed, you won't have to submit it. Next slide. Now, this is the big one in the room. Addendum 46 is an update. Basically, it's a complete rewrite. 2006, the standard for sampling was written. And if you're using sampling, you were confused at one time, then you thought it was one way, but no, it was another way. And now ResNet may be saying, well, no, you didn't do it the right way. So we needed to have a much better document. And the way we've been doing the standards for the last multiple years is we're writing the language that will help you work prescriptively, similar to code, the way the codes are written these days. It's not should and shall, it's do this. If it isn't here, you don't have to do it. That's a prescriptive methodology. So in Addendum 46, we put this through the standards. The addendum is out there. The addendum is mandatory July 1st of this year. Now, it is optional right now, but as many providers are already reaching out to those companies and the rating companies that do sampling, there's a lot of changes here. And we're going to get back into that in a few minutes. Now, Addendum 78, addressing the sunset of sampling for single family homes. This is low-rise residential. This will be an attached townhouse, a single family detached house, a duplex, low-rise residential 3 stories or less, not multifamily. Addendum 78 became mandatory 1/1/25. If you have a sample project, sampling for single family homes, low-rise residential is gone. And that did come as a recommendation of the Energy Star program. ResNet agreed, and the request for Addendum 78 went out to consensus. I will tell you the comments were so light, it made it easy to do away with and sunset single family sampling. So that's no more. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of Addendum 46 on the next slide. All right, now I've only listed, because we would spend the rest of the afternoon on chapter 6. I've only listed in this page the largest part of the changes. But if you get done with this webinar, I'm going to give you my email address. I'm happy to show you or send it to you so you see the full addendum, and also show you on the website where all this stuff is, because this is a major change for the provider. In some cases, it's a major change for the rating company. HERS rater shall develop a sampling plan prior to commencing sampling. ResNet must be notified by the provider of all sampled projects prior to conducting the initial qualification set. On each provider's registry, there's a form. That form is to be filled out and provided to ResNet for every sampling project. In order to do that, you as the HERS rater, whether you work for the provider or not, you're an independent company, you're obligated then to provide this information to the provider that you have a sample project that you're interested in bidding. You ought to do it way forward of trying to get this stuff done when you're trying to help the builder get started with a sampling project. If you don't, you may likely not be able to submit that project. And this is effective of 7/1/25. So a few months from now, in July, this will be mandatory. Energy modeling. Units shall be grouped. This is more detailed than you had in the last set of standards. Energy modeling. Units shall be grouped for modeling purposes. At minimum, all units shall have the same number of bedrooms and conditioned floor area within 10% of one another. In the past, if it met the same building methodology, you could then group them. And it was light on information. These are more specific. And this is going to cause you to do some more modeling, which you should, in order to determine, let's say, a 4-story building, where is the worst case scenario? Where in the modeling, is that on the first floor on a slab, is that in the middle of the building, or is that under the roof? And you're going to be surprised, but at the same time, you must do this additional modeling in order to prepare yourself for the sampling project and provide it to your provider for approval. Sampling will begin only after the threshold specifications have been verified in 5 consecutive dwelling units without any incidences of failure. This is a change. May be good for you, may not be good for you, but it is a change from the original set of standards. A complete set of sampling verification shall be performed at a minimum rate of 20% within a given set. Again, more detail, a change. A minimum quantity of sampling verifications for each sampled feature within a sampled set shall be calculated by multiplying the number of sampled features by 20% and rounded the result up to the nearest whole number. Again, much more detail than you had before. We're going to get through this, but there are some changes to sampling that need to be done. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Now, that pretty much wraps up sampling, but that's only the beginning. Use my email. If you're not sure how to get addendum 46, you can go to the resnet.us website and go to the addendums, and addendum 46 is on the website. You can download that directly from the website without getting too much other stuff. You can tool around on the website also to see all the different things. This is not in the continuous maintenance document yet. Items that are included in standards are added to the continuous maintenance documents once they become mandatory. So you'll have to go print addendum 46. You'll basically have a 15 or 20 page document. A bulk of that is the crossouts from the original program to the current standard for sampling. Also, look at subtle changes when you're doing multifamily in 301, because 301, there is a couple subtle changes. They are similar to the way this language is written, but they're slightly different in the 301 manual. All right, Chapter 9, Addendum 75. Where is this in the project process? It is out for the second public comment, and that's not back yet. So we have, this may have a few more changes to this. It may be held up. Right now, it would go into effect in January of 2026. But I will tell you, it's a busy season the last several years in making changes to our standards, because if you all haven't realized, you're busy, the industry's busy, the industry grew up, and now there's a lot of people in the industry, which brings changes and a frequency of updates for RESNET to keep up with the standards. And so if you have any questions and you're not sure, I'm always a resource for that as well. Ongoing review, rating quality assurance provider, QA activities. enhanced quality assurance reviews, monitoring of QA providers, multiple changes as the organization transaction to electronic submissions of all records to the registry. All calculation formats match the most current version. All applicable review items match the most current version. All data fields are mapped correctly for transmission and storage to RESNET building registry, and multiple updates to Section 903, procedures, cleaned up in language, disciplinary actions, and appeals. We did a lot of updates to this section. We had some areas that were a little vague, and this addendum 75 cleans up a lot of these sections. Next slide, please. Section 904, HERS Rater Quality Assurance requirements of the use of the RESNET QA checklist. Again, this is a follow-up to Chapter 1 of all records to be uploaded to the registry. Remote QA, significant change. There will be a change and a minimum requirement for the raters quality to be allowed to be remote QA'd. So pay a lot of attention when you get a chance to this section of Addendum 75 as this moves into the standards, because while remote QA has a place in quality assurance, a rater that has had disciplinary actions may not be eligible for remote QA. I will also go ahead and put it out there that while remote QA, if you've done it, it's challenging, because as soon as you go down to the basement, you lose the feed. There are new electronic means that are coming out into the industry that will make it much easier for you to be able to do remote QA in the fields. But at the same time, when you're doing remote QA in the field, there are additional backstops that you need to pay attention to versus a field QA in person. And pay attention to those before you consider doing remote QA to make sure that you meet the RESNET standards, as you want to make sure that the quality assurance department is happy with that when you submit it. Rating quality assurance providers' responsibility always of accuracy of records. There's a little more information in there about this. Recertification dates, calibration records, and if you haven't been contacted, field calibrations are required again with RESNET. Make sure that you're paying attention to that. Your providers are reaching out to you to update your calibration records and to list all equipment that you use for a HERS rating, blower door, duct blaster, combustion safety equipment. All of these generally have requirements for a calibration, and those records need to be maintained in the registry for each rater or an RFI. Next slide, please. All right, ethics and consumer complaints. We updated the Ethics and Appeals Committee makeup, the chair and the membership. It came up that someone, and we get regular correspondence from the industry, and those are actually very helpful, that come in that question how ethics and appeals and how the standards are written, and what if I do it this way? Is that out of compliance? When those come in, they also promote us to make changes to the standards, and that happened in ethics of appeal. We changed the makeup. We made it less have less conflict of interest. Therefore, it should make the process fairer to those that end up in an ethics and appeal complaint. We did updates to how the complaint is filed. Updates were made throughout the entire section probation, suspension, revocation, accreditation providers, and updates to the Appendix B in field QA evaluations period, and certification periods. So again, these are updates in process. They should be mandatory by the beginning of January of 2026. Next slide, please. STC 900, you can see the makeup on the screen. I'm the chair. Emily Cooper-Nell Glitch with PSD is the vice chair. We have a user, just the same makeup that for the most part that STC 200 and any of the STCs have. We have users, we have different of the different groups. We want to thank these folks that attend the meetings and vote on the the information from the working groups. And I very much appreciate these folks that are on the formal committee. Now, and you see we have a nice range across the country of folks, including Elliot Seibert from the EPA, Jerica Stacy from the ICC, and then we have Michael is a rater up in Pittsburgh. We have Christine Burrow with the Arizona Public Service. David Chu was with CalCerts. He's actually with Cheers now. Phil Crone with the LBA. Phil was wanting to get involved. So we asked him, and Phil was nice enough to agree to come and sit with us in making these standards. And then we have Leo Jansen, Dean Potter, and Frank Swool with EAM projects or associates. By the way, now, Charla said that they need people to come join the working groups. I will tell you, the work is done in the working groups. These folks here, once the work is done in the working groups, and that takes weeks. I mean, we've had some updates in the standards take 6 months just in meetings every 2 weeks of a working group or a subcommittee. Sampling took 2.5 years. Emily led that subcommittee, and it took some time for us to get those standards written and completely rewrite sampling. But if you're interested, contact me. We're always looking for people to join the working groups, and we'd love to have you. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Okay, there's my phone number at the office, and there's my email. Email's best. My phone rings way too much now, but you're happy to if you email me, I'll be glad to guide you to help you understand the standards better. Send you a copy of Addendum 46. I so much appreciate your time, and I hope that you'll jump into the resnet.us website and tool around there. There's a lot of information on the website that you can pull down on your own, but if you can't, just email me. I'll be glad to help you. And I want to thank you all for your time, and we'll look forward to some questions here.
Thank you both, John and Charla, for those presentations. We have a few questions and about 15 to 20 minutes left, so we'll try to get through as many as possible. One, I think, is a question to confirm that remote field QA for raters still allowed?
Yes.
Okay, easy enough. Let's see. How does the sampled projects Addendum 46 update impact multifamily building projects?
It quite a bit. And again, you have to get into the meat and potatoes of it to see it, but basically they're just asking you, the standard asks you to do more due diligence, and really the biggie is to make sure that your provider has approved it prior to any work on that job site and before any qualification of the sample set is done, because you may find out that if you miss something in the standard, that your provider won't approve the mix. And the reason I brought up for you to get approval when you're going to bid a project, is because most of the grading companies and the builder, they're only considering sampling because of cost. And if your provider was to make changes and not approve the sampling project in the mix of sampled sets as you believe they are, you're going to find out that your bid may not work for you now. Now, I didn't mention this, but just to tell you how detailed this is, in the past, we allowed certain areas in groups to be part of the same sample set if it wasn't in the same community. So you would have multiple communities, let's say, in that statistical area, and we would allow that. If you look at the addendum 46 details, it's that community. So if you have a community of 12 multifamily buildings, they can all be within that sample set. If it's two communities 3 miles down the road, they're their own samples system. They will not be part of that one. So please get approval early.
Okay, another question. So to be clear, all units in an apartment building must have exactly the same number of bedrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
When in that sample set, and worst case scenario. So read through it.
The person says they're doing a 16-unit apartment building that has 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So you're saying there needs to be something for each of those bedroom styles?
Yes, worst case.
Okay.
When you're calculating your worst case.
Okay. Another question, can you reiterate when does addendum 75 go into effect?
1/1/26.
Someone's asking about the practice units. Is it 10 units before you're qualified or 5 units?
5.
Okay. Let's see.
But it's 5 in a row with no issues.
With no failures.
Yeah, if
Correct.
you have a failure on the 5th one, you've got to do 5 more with no failures.
Thank you, Charla.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone is saying townhome removal from sampling protocols means significantly higher costs for developers. Perhaps there should be some project size where sampling is authorized.
I don't see sampling for single family low-rise residential coming back.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a mind reader. And I only have control of what I have control of, but I will tell you the industry didn't fight single family going away.
Okay. Will active RFIs be required to update their skills certification to the new credentialing criteria?
No, they will not. Once you're credentialed, you are credentialed.
Okay. So those changes are for those getting certified going forward?
Yes, they are for the new certifications.
Okay.
I would add this: the practical simulation training and exam is a huge training tool for RFIs, because like Charlotte said in her presentation, that's what they're doing in the field. So what that teaches them is what data points are important that go into the model, and that's why Charla and STC 200 are moving to add that as a requirement for RFIs.
And that has not been finalized yet. So one thing I have seen, happen in the past, and I'm not saying it will this time, but it could be that could be counted as some continuing, some professional development or things like that. Since this is not final yet, I can't actually answer that definitively. So, jump on the work group and let your voice be heard. But my question to the RESNET staff was the same question about whether existing RFIs would have to recertify, and the answer was no. So I don't expect that to happen, but there might be some, some special benefit of going ahead and doing that simulation tool and taking that exam. Go forward. We'll find out once it's developed.
Okay, great. Another question. Yes, this webinar will be available for later review. We will provide the recording and slides to everyone who is registered, and it'll be posted on the RESNET website for those who have a later interest. Any other questions? Okay, that means you guys did a great job explaining everything. I want to thank you again so much for joining us and going through all these changes. It's very important. We will definitely let the network know about this webinar so they can take a listen, take a look if they weren't able to join us today. Everyone, please join me in thanking John and Charla, John Hensley and Charla Reed, for presenting today. We thank you all for taking time out to join us today. And again, if you have any questions, per John and Charlotte's email, feel free to reach out to them directly. If you have questions for RESNET, reach out to us at info@resnet.us. We will have another webinar coming up on March 26th to go over additional standards changes, and so you will receive a link to register for that in the follow-up email. Well, I guess we have gave you about 10 minutes back to your day. Thank you again so much for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.